This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to part 1.
You will hear a conversation between two old friends who meet each other by accident. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example. This time only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello, Frank. How are you?
Wow, John. Yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I haven't seen you since we left school. How long ago is that now? It must be 10 years. Or is it 11?
No, it's 9 years now.
So, 9 years, A, is the correct answer. Now we begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, as a recording is not played twice. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, Frank. How are you?
Wow, John. Yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I haven't seen you since we left school. How long ago is that now? It must be 10 years. Or is it 11?
No, it's 9 years now. What are you doing with yourself? You were going to be a doctor, weren't you? Or something medical, like a chiropractor.
Well, I was going to be, but that's not what I did. I started medical school, but I didn't really enjoy it, and the idea of doing it for 5 or 6 years and then continuing to study for years after that didn't really appeal. So I left medical school and went into teacher training college to be a science teacher.
And I thought for all these years that you were earning megabucks as a doctor or working in a pharmaceutical company.
No, just a teacher. I love it though. I'm so glad I did it instead of medicine. And what are you doing, Frank?
After school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I travelled for a couple of years around the world.
Great. Where did you go?
Lots of places, but nowhere in Europe. I wanted to travel long distance. First of all, I travelled through India and Nepal. Then I moved into Southeast Asia for a few months. Then I went through Australia and New Zealand. After that, I went to Africa and went around various countries there. After that, it was South America, Central America and North America.
How on earth did you afford all that?
I just settled down and worked for a few months in places where I could get a job and save money. Then, when I had enough, I moved on. I wasn't exactly staying in luxurious places, though.
And now what? You always wanted to work with computers, didn't you?
Yes, I remember that. However, when I finished all the travelling, I thought of going into travel writing, but it's so competitive. I always fancied journalism as well, so I got into that. And right now, I'm working for the local paper.
Did you have to study for that?
Well, some people don't. But I went to college for a year to do a journalism course. And I'm glad I did, as it gave me a bit of a head start, and certainly helped me get my first job.
And are you married and kids, or what?
I married a girl called Liz, that I met whilst I was in Australia. We haven't had kids yet, though we're planning on having at least 2 or 3. What about you?
Do you remember Kate, who I dated whilst at school?
Of course, the prettiest girl in the school. You didn't marry her, did you?
Yes, we managed to stay together all through college. She did teaching too, so we were at the same place for 3 years at college. We thought about getting married in our last year at college, but it was all too much, and then we were too busy the year after graduation. So we did it 2 years after we graduated.
Wow, I'm so happy that you guys stayed together. That's great.
Where are you living now?
Oh, in Westley. In the High Street, actually. What about you?
In Wesley too. We've got a flat near the secondary school. Obviously then it's easier to get into work.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 6 to 10.
Listen, why don't you and Kate come over for dinner sometime?
That's a great idea. When?
How about next Friday?
Can't do Friday, I'm afraid. Both Kate and I have a parent-teacher afternoon on Friday after school, and then we'll have to do the paperwork in the evening.
What about Saturday then?
That would normally be fine, but our babysitter is away that night, and we won't be able to find one at such short notice. Why don't you and Liz come over for dinner at ours, and then we'll be able to look after the kids. You'll be able to meet them too.
OK, let's do that then. Liz will be happy. She won't have to cook.
I'll be doing the cooking when you come round. I love cooking.
So, what time shall we come round? 8 o'clock?
Well, we'll be home around 6:30 that night, as we're going out for the afternoon with the kids. I'd say come at about 7:30.
Are you sure that's long enough to get things ready?
Well, that'll be an hour. I don't need more than that.
And what's your phone number, just in case?
01347 835 825. That's the home number. And the mobile is 07978 290 512. What about you?
I've only got a mobile. It's 07623 963 957.
What was that last bit again?
I'll say it all again. 07623 963 957.
And I'd better give you the address.
Oh yes, that would help.
We live at Flat 3, Evergreen Terrace. It's just past the church on the right. We've got a postbox opposite us and a doctor's surgery next door.
I should be able to find that.
Anything you don't like to eat?
Well, I hate fish and seafood. And Liz doesn't care much for red meat. She likes white meat, though.
How about chicken?
That should be fine.
Oh, yes. When you arrive, none of the bells are marked for security, and there are 4 buttons. You need to press the bell second from the bottom.
Second from the bottom. OK, got that.
I'll be able to buzz you in, and then come up to the first floor, and the door will be open.
Great. Well, it's so good to see you again, John. I really look forward to seeing you on Saturday and meeting Kate again. And the kids, of course.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to meeting Liz.
See you Saturday then. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That is the end of part 1.
You will now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You will hear a lecture about sports. Listen carefully and fill in all the blanks with no more than 3 words. First, you have some time to look at the questions. Now, listen to the lecture and answer questions 1 to 17.
Not all people like to work, but everyone likes to play. As sports help people live happily, They help to keep people healthy and feeling good. When people are playing games, they move a lot. This is good for their health. Having fun with their friends makes them happy. So all over the world, men and women, boys and girls enjoy sports. Since long ago, adults and children have called their friends together to spend hours, even days, playing games. Sports usually take a variety of forms. Organised competitions, which draw huge crowds to cheer their favourite team to victory, athletic games, played for recreation anywhere sufficient space is found, and hunting and fishing. Most sports are seasonal, so that what is happening in sports depends on the time of the year. As sports change with the season, people often do not play the same games in winter as in summer. If you want to know what others' favourite sports are, first of all, you should find where they live. Generally speaking, people in hot areas are fond of swimming, while people in cold places love skiing or skating. In this case, surfing is believed to be an important sport in Hawaii. The Pacific Ocean sends huge waves up on the beaches, waves that are just right for surfing. Some sports, including wrestling, boxing, horse racing, etc., are called spectator sports, as the number of spectators greatly exceeds the number of players in the game. Other sports are called participant sports, drawing a crowd of onlookers only on special occasions, such as tournaments. Some sports are commercial and professional, with players who are paid for their participation and with audiences who pay admission to watch.
That is the end of part 2. Now turns to part 3.
In this section, you are going to hear a conversation. Before you listen, please look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen to the conversation and answer questions 21 to 30.
Afternoon, everyone. Well, I think we can begin straight away by getting Ivy and Andy to do their presentation. Could you start, Ivy?
Yes. Well, we've done a survey on local entertainment. Basically, we tried to find out how students feel about the entertainment in the city and how much they use it.
Yes, so we've called our project Out and About. Yes, that's a good title, Out and About.
We wanted to find out how well students use the entertainment facilities in the city, whether they get to see the latest plays and films, that kind of thing.
Now, we have our own facilities on campus, of course.
Yes, we deliberately omitted those as we really wanted to examine outside entertainment in the city, as opposed to on the university campus.
Actually, there are a lot of areas to choose from, but in the end we limited ourselves to looking at 3 general categories: cinema, theatre and music. Right?
OK, well, first of all, cinema. In the city, there are 3 main places where you can see films. There's the new multi-screen cinema complex, the old Park Cinema, and the Late Night Odeon.
So if you look at this chart, in terms of audience size, the multi-screen complex accounts for 75% of all cinema seats. The Park Cinema accounts for 20% of seats, and the Late Night Odeon has just 5% of seats.
As you probably know, the complex and the park show all the latest films, while the late night cinema tends to show cult films. So when we interviewed the students, we thought the complex would be the most popular choice. But surprisingly, it was the Late Night Odeon.
Yeah, most students told us that if they wanted to see a new film, they would wait for it to show at the park. The complex is more expensive and further out of the city, so you have to pay more to get there as well. Yes, and that adds to the cost, of course, and detracts the popularity, evidently.
Well, next, we looked at theatres. The results here were interesting because, as you know, there's a theatre on campus, which is popular. But there's also the Stage Theatre in the city, which is very old and architecturally beautiful. And there's the large modern theatre, the Ashtop, which has recently been built.
So you just looked at the two theatres in the city? Yes, but the thing about the theatres is that there's a variety of seat prices. Also, the types of performance vary, so students tend to buy seats at both and like using both for different prices, and if they want cheap seats at the Ashtop, they can just sit further from the front.
What we did find that was very interesting is that there are periods during the year where students seem to go to the theatre and periods where they go to the cinema. And we really think that that's something to do with budget. If you look at this graph, you can see that there's a peak around November, December when they go to the theatre more, and then a period in April, May when neither is particularly popular. And then theatre viewing seems to fall off virtually while the cinema becomes quite popular in June, July.
I think you're probably right about your conclusions. Well, lastly, we looked at music. And this time we were really investigating the sort of small music clubs that offer things like folk or specialise in local bands. So not musicals as much. That's right.
We looked at 3 small music venues and we examined the quality of the entertainment and venue and gave a ranking for these. Across, meaning that the quality was poor, a tick, meaning it was okay, and 2 ticks for excellent. First of all, the Blues Club, which obviously specialises in blues music. This was a pretty small place, and the seating was minimal, so we didn't give that a very good rating.
No, we don't recommend that one really.
Then the Sansu, which plays a lot of South American music, was a big place. Very lively, good performers, so 2 ticks for that one. The Pier Hotel is a folk venue, a good place for local and up-and-coming folk artists to play. Not the best of venues, as it's in a basement and a bit dark, but the quality, if the entertainment, was reasonable and the lighting was as warm as we felt. It deserved an average rating. Finally, there's the Bulldrock Cafe, which features big rock bands and is pretty popular with students, and we enjoyed ourselves there as well, so total marks for that one.
And then, did you get any information from the students as to which of the clubs they preferred?
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You'll hear a teacher talking about several British art galleries. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 33. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 33.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the first class of V100 Art and History. The objectives of the course, as you will have seen if you've taken a look at the syllabus, include familiarizing yourselves with the vocabulary and language of art, learning about the basic elements of art and design, and finally, discussing historical periods as they pertain to art. The course will also give you the opportunity to visit some of the many galleries and museums that Britain has to offer. So, having said that, I'd like to spend the rest of today's class talking about 4 of the more important galleries that we will be visiting in the coming year. As most of you already know, or at least I hope most of you know, there are 4 Tate galleries in all. To begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Tate Modern. Tate Modern is located in a very busy part of London called the South Bank. It's close to two world-renowned tourist attractions, St. Paul's Cathedral and Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. Now, interestingly enough, Tate Modern is housed in what was a power station built in several stages between 1947 and 1963. It was closed down in 1981 and reopened as a gallery in the year 2000. Tate Modern consists of 5 levels, with the Tate collection being shown on the 3rd and 5th levels. On level 2, the works of contemporary artists are exhibited, while level 4 is used for holding large temporary exhibitions. Since this museum opened, it has become a popular spot for both Londoners and tourists alike. And believe it or not, it doesn't cost anything to get in to see the collection displays.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 34 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 34 to 40.
Now, the second gallery I'd like to talk about is Tate St. Ives, which is in Cornwall. It was built on the site of a gasworks, and it overlooks Porthmeor Beach. Tate St. Ives is housed in a 3-story building that was designed by the architects Evans and Shalliff. It was established in 1993, 7 years before Tate Modern was opened, and the gallery exhibits the works of modern British artists, including members of the St. Ives School, a group of artists living and working in the area from the 30s onwards. In later lectures, we'll be looking at the work of some of the artists who belong to that group and the ways in which they influenced each other. Okay, am I going too fast for any of you? No? Good. Next, I want to talk about Tate Britain, which is a gorgeous gallery situated right in the heart of Westminster. Tate Britain was the first of the 4 Tate galleries to open, and it was established in 1897. It was built on the site of an old prison, and when it first opened its doors, it was called the National Gallery of British Art. Later, it became known as the Tate Gallery, after the man who founded it, Sir Henry Tate. During its lifetime, Tate Britain has been damaged twice, once by floodwaters from the River Thames, and once by bombings during World War II. This gallery has an interesting range of exhibitions of historic and modern art from 1500 up to the present day. Now, the last gallery I'd like to tell you about is called Tate Liverpool. It's not hard to figure out where this gallery is located, is it? It was opened in 1988 to exhibit displays from the Tate collection, and it also has a program of temporary exhibitions. Tate Liverpool is housed in what was once a warehouse, and for some years it was one of the biggest galleries of modern and contemporary art in the UK. Well, that's a brief overview of just a few of the galleries we'll be visiting. I'd like now to look in a little more detail at what you can expect to see in each of these galleries, starting with Tate Britain.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.